Is this a great game or what? And this is a huge episode because the trade deadline is here for Major League Baseball. The Olympics have kicked off in Paris, and our guest today is Eddy Alvarez, a Major League player currently playing AAA in the Red Sox system. But you might not know him, but here's something great that we're going to talk to him about. In 2020, he won a medal playing baseball in the Olympics, and then in 2014, he medaled as a speed skater in the Olympics for the United States. Dad, huge get. Could you pick two more different sports for a guy to get medals in the Olympics?
And when you think Eddy Alvarez, you have to think about Jim Thorpe. And
Right.
we will talk about Jim Thorpe later. But yes, we have a great guest today because he can speak to us about so many varied things in athletics. And that's what we love about athletics. Speaking of which, Jeff, did you shave? What's the deal? You have a clean face for the first time in how long?
Yeah, for those who watch on YouTube or even follow us on social media at Great Game or What, I usually have a nice little scruff going, but, you know, I just decided to change it up. And my near-year-old baby doesn't like the kisses with the beard, Dad. Scratches her face. She doesn't like it. So I shave so I can give her kisses.
Well, Jeff, now you're in the same company as Todd Helton, who just went into the Hall of Fame. And at his Hall of Fame induction speech, he's so superstitious about everything. It's unbelievable. Even I didn't know exactly how superstitious he was, but he claims he shaved his beard during the course of a game because he was so upset with the way he was swinging a bat. But he couldn't shave it in between one inning because it was a big, thick beard. So he shaved it as the game went along. So he started the game with a beard and he ended the game without a beard. And that's what he did to get his swing back. And with Todd Helton, it really worked. You're not getting any more hits because you shave your beard. That is like reserved for Major League Baseball players, specifically Hall of Famers.
I'm hoping the podcast gets more hits because of the no beard. This is a great time for me to say, wherever you're listening, hit the follow or subscribe button. So if you're on Apple Podcasts, there's a little follow button at the top. Spotify's the same thing. YouTube, you can subscribe, and it's obviously for free here. Is this a great game or what? Now, Dad, before we get into the episode, I have to put this on my neck. This is a medal. 2024 Jones Lane Invitational Champions.
So we won the golf tournament over the weekend. Michael Kurkjian, Mark Keenahan, Jeff Kurkjian, and Tim Kurkjian won the Jones Lane Open, which might be the smallest golf tournament in the history. Not small as far as people involved, as far as talent involved, but we were -5. And we won, and we had the green jacket ceremony in the backyard for Michael Kurkjian, and I think that has to be the proudest moment of my entire life, standing with my teammates wearing a green jacket. It was just wonderful.
Well, and that medal is going to be on display in our studio back here in Pennsylvania. Don't worry.
I hope so. And speaking of things on your chest, Jeff, as you can see, I'm wearing my Walter Johnson sweatshirt. Did I ever tell you I went to Walter Johnson High School?
Yeah.
Yes, like a million times. So I was wearing this sweatshirt recently to go order a sandwich at like one of those mall food courts. And the fellow behind the counter looked at me and he goes, I need your name. So Walter is your name. So he looked at my sweater and he thought my name was Walter Johnson, which I was thrilled by, which means now I have 417 wins and 113 shutouts. But I had to explain to him, that's not my name. I don't wear my name on my sweater wherever I go. Like, how pretentious do you think I am? So, and speaking of that, Jeff.
Can you imagine if Tim Kurkjian?
Right.
On your sweatshirt. You're not that old that you need to keep your name on your chest.
Right. Just call me Walter. So the other day, it wasn't that long ago, I called some woman in order to change my phone number and put in a different number with her into her system. It's hard to explain. So she was very confused, but she asked me, is this a business number or a personal number? I said, this is my business number. And then for some reason, she asked me, what company do you work for? I said,
Right,
I work.
that's pretty common, right? They will
Oh,
ask you, okay, what company account is this under, right?
right. So I said, I work for Disney. And
Right.
she asked me, do you own the company? So I, I didn't even know how to answer that. I said, no, I don't actually own the company. What I should have said was it's a multi-billion-dollar company. And if I owned it, do you really think I would be calling you right now on my own to get a new phone number put into your system? This is so unimportant. So one
Well,
person thought I was Walter, and the other now thinks I'm Walt because I'm Walt Disney because I own the company.
you took the joke right out of my hand. What are our takeaways from Major League Baseball right now, Dad?
Well, every week, Jeff, there are like 20 of them, but I have to keep them short so we don't go 2 hours on this podcast. But Dylan Cease of the Padres threw a no-hitter the other day against the Nationals. And, he has exceptional stuff. The Padres acquired him from the White Sox in the offseason to try to get into the playoffs, and the Padres are rolling, and he's one big reason why. And I've used this on the podcast before, Jeff, but as you know, I love anagrams, and the anagram for Dylan Cease is CSEE, a Cy, CY, land. See a Cy land. So there's a chance that Dylan Cease, with a tremendous finish, could win the Cy Young, his first Cy Young in the National League this year. See a Cy land. I love those things. Also, Jeff, he had a no-hitter for 8 2/3 innings earlier in his career, and he did it against the Twins, and he lost it because Luis Arraez got a hit with 2 outs in the 9th to break up his no-hitter. And the beauty of baseball is Luis Arraez is now his teammate on the Padres. And he did not play, which is really unusual. Luis Arraez did not play in the game, but he got the game ball, the final out of the game, and he presented it to Dylan Cease. Like, how great is that?
It's so fitting and so beautiful. It's full circle. The guy who broke it up now is honoring you as a teammate. That's neat.
Right. All right, Tyler Fitzgerald, Jeff, is a shortstop for the Giants, and he just hit 8 home runs in a 10-game stretch. I repeat, he's a shortstop. The last Giant to do that was Barry Bonds in 2004. Also, keep in mind, the Giants have not had a 30 home run hitter in any season. 30. That happens all the time now since Barry Bonds retired. So anyone who does anything home run wise that Barry Bonds did is amazing. So I just bring up Tyler Fitzgerald for other reasons. He's the son of a former major leaguer who played very briefly in Mike Fitzgerald in 1984. He's a great athlete, and he was a little guy in high school. So he's like the classic late bloomer. Now, I'm not sure he's got this power for the rest of his career. This might be an aberration, but Jeff, this is why baseball is so great, is that a little guy in high school has now grown and filled out and hit 8 homers in 10 games in the major leagues. I'm sure there were high school opponents of his who go, how did that guy ever turn out to be this good of a major league hitter? This is why baseball is so beautiful. Alex Cora, Jeff, signed a 3-year extension to manage the Red Sox. And I know there are people all across the game going, what took the Red Sox so long to re-sign Alex Cora? He was a free agent at the end of the year. He's a great manager. He might win Manager of the Year in the American League this year. And I always loved him, Jeff, because he's so self-deprecating. He was a good major league player for quite a while, but mostly as a utility guy. So I asked him about his career, and he said, oh, I was an I-4 guy. And I said, what does that mean? He goes, oh, in spring training, because his teams usually trained in Florida, he was the guy that made all the long bus trips on I-4 in Florida, one of the worst roads in America, because the trips were endless. And he would take those trips as a utility player so the everyday players could get a day off and wouldn't have to take that really long trip. And he only had one rule. If I'm going to take all these long trips, I need to get 4 at bats when I play in that game because I need to keep my skills sharp. I'm not going to take a 3-hour bus ride to take 1 at bat and then get back on the bus and go home. That's another thing we love about Alex Cora. And, he was my teammate at ESPN, Jeff, for years. And I loved working with him because he was so smart and so honest, one of the best baseball guys I've ever met. And Jeff, he used to work the 1 a.m. baseball tonight all the time, 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. And here's a former major leaguer who we all knew was going to coach, then manage in the major leagues. And not once did I ever hear him complain about, why do I have to do the 1 to 2 a.m.? He just thought this is part of the job. This is part of the learning process. He became really good on television, and then he became exceptional when he put the uniform back on as a coach and now as a manager.
Yeah, he's incredible, and it speaks volumes to not always is it the best player on the team who would make the best manager. There's a different skill set, and you've even mentioned that some of the best players who are just gifted at the game to a certain degree don't become great managers because they don't know how to break it down for somebody. But with the I-4 story, he sounds like a guy that's your perfect clubhouse guy to be around.
He can relate to anyone. And some superstar baseball players look at a player and go, why can't you do that? I could do that. Well, the reason the other guys can't do it is they're not as good as you. Alex has a great touch with people. Another reason he's such a good manager.
And our game changer of the week this week has to do with the trade deadline. Now, I want to be upfront with everybody listening, right? We're recording this on Monday around 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But the podcast will come out on Tuesdays as always. And then the trade deadline will wrap up Tuesday evening. So there's probably going to be some things we miss because of the time we're recording. However, there's already been a lot of movement within the league, and this is a big year for trades.
Right. And Jeff, the game changer is the trade deadline. I'm telling you right now, this changes the fortunes of teams moving forward. Are we in or are we out? I've been told this countless times. This is when general managers earn all their money right now. Do we take our top prospect and trade him for somebody who can help us get to the playoffs and maybe win the World Series this year? But what if we don't and we just traded our best prospect? A bad trade, I've seen it, Jeff, can set back a team for years. A great trade can win the World Series for you this year, as I'm just using one example. Aroldis Chapman went to the Cubs. Maybe not the best example, but they won the World Series in part because they made a very risky move to bring in a rental player, but he helped them win the World Series in 2016.
Well,
and
you
Jeff,
even look, one example I always say is the Juan Soto trade. Yeah, the Nationals probably aren't going to win the World Series this year, but you look at all of the players that were in that trade when he went to the Padres, and fans were not happy about that. But now that team is fuller this many years later because of that trade.
Absolutely. I mean, they got Mackenzie Gore in that trade. They got C.J. Abrams in that trade. And of course, they got James Wood in that trade.
Yeah.
And you're right. This is where GMs have to make those really difficult decisions. And the trade deadline, I mean, the new playoff format is not helping things because more teams make the playoffs, and you have to make that gutsy decision. Are we really going to make the playoffs? Can we really do something in October? But also, Jeff, just to show you how things really change, and I'm going to be close on this. Late 80s, I'm covering the Orioles. I'm the beat guy covering the Orioles for the Baltimore Sun. And back then, if you traded for a player, he had to be on your team by September 1st. Otherwise, the trade is not being made. And when I say on your team, I mean physically on your team, like in the clubhouse. Otherwise, you can't ship him there the next day. So Fred Lynn got traded from my team, the Orioles, to the Tigers, for Chris Hoyles and others. But the trade went through because Fred Lynn was in Michigan, Detroit, Michigan airspace. He was flying in a plane to Detroit, and they said, okay, he was technically in Michigan at the time, so that trade went through. Needless to say, we don't do that anymore, and I think it's really good that the deadline is over at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, Eastern Time, and then there are no more trades for the rest of the regular season, so you can't sneak a guy through waivers. That's another reason why the trade deadline is so important.
And that's our game changer of the week, and we're really excited because we're going to be out at the Little League World Series with our friends at Game Changer. That will be 2 weeks from this episode. You'll get to hear us from there, and we'll be hanging out with Game Changer, which is the ultimate app when it comes to all things scoring and streaming your kids' games. So can't wait for that. Dad, Quirkjians for this week.
All right. As always, Jeff, I love the Quirkjians. I have a million of them, and I always have to whittle it down to about 5. So Nick Pivetta of the Red Sox had a bizarre pitching line, and you know how much I love bizarre box score lines. So he pitched 2 2/3 innings, which means he got 8 outs in the game. He gave up 10 hits. He gave up 8 runs. He had no walks and struck out 6 batters of the 8 outs that he got. So I checked with Frank at the Elias, and I said, Frank, I've never seen a box score line quite like this. And Frank confirmed since 1893, when the pitching mound was placed at 60 feet 6 inches. Again, Jeff, it's amazing to me that the modern era in baseball is defined as 1900 on, but we still refer in everyday notes to 1893, okay? So it's the first time since 1893 that any pitcher has only gotten 8 outs in a game, given up 10 hits, given up 8 runs, not walked anyone, and struck out 6 batters. So that box score line that pitching line has never happened in the history of baseball. And Jeff, we played well over 200,000 games, and that game had never happened. Am I wrong in thinking this is pretty cool?
It is pretty cool. And, I mean, talk about streaky. You're giving up 8 runs, but you struck out 6 of 8 batters.
Right. That's how the game is played today, Jeff.
Yeah.
If you miss your location, even as a great pitcher with great stuff, they're going to hit they're not just going to hit a single to left field. They're going to hit a home run.
Right.
If you make your location, you throw it in the place you want to, you don't just get them out, you strike them out. And this pitching line is the perfect example. All right. Also, J.D. Martinez of the Mets hit a grand slam for his 5th different team. And as you know, I love grand slams, Jeff. Pete Rose hit 1 grand slam. Derek Jeter hit 1 grand slam in his career. The great Al Kaline hit 3 grand slams, hit 399 homers, and only 3 grand slams. They're hard to come by. So J.D. Martinez now has a grand slam for 5 different teams. So the record is 6 different teams for which a player has hit a grand slam. Fred McGriff, Gary Sheffield, Devon White. I would have never guessed Devon White, and Mark Reynolds all hit a grand slam for 6 different teams. And I told you, Jeff, several podcasts ago, Mark Reynolds, one of the funniest people I've ever met, looked at me once and he said, I hold a lot of weird baseball records, and this is just another one of them. Okay, Jeff, on Sunday, Xavier Edwards of the Marlins hit for the cycle. By the way, the Marlins went their first 30 seasons in their existence without anyone hitting for the cycle. And the last 2 years, they've had a cycle hitter. Luis Arraez last year, and now Xavier Edwards. How weird is that? No cycles in the history of the franchise, and then 2 in 2 years. So let's see how well you listen to poor Pop here. When I do cycle notes all the time, because I love cycles, they're these statistical anomalies. Give me the 4 guys. If you get this wrong, Jeff, I mean it. You're off the podcast. Give me the 4 guys that I have mentioned every 2 weeks on this show who never hit for the cycle.
Hank Aaron.
1.
Willie Mays.
2.
Not Ted Williams, even though
Right.
I always say Ted Williams.
Right.
Barry Bonds,
Correct.
and Babe Ruth. Did I say Babe Ruth?
Right. Yes, you got it, Jeff. I'm really proud of you. Here's the thing with Xavier Edwards, Jeff, and I love this. He had never hit a home run in the major leagues at the time that he hit for the cycle. So he's one of 5 guys in major league history to hit for the cycle, having 0 career home runs at the time he hit for the cycle.
So respectfully, it kind of takes away from your first career home run because you just hit for the cycle.
Right.
Like, I know that's a bit of a fluke, right? Like it's not exactly an accomplishment, right? It's more you went 4 for 4 or 4 for 5, but your first career home run and then a triple and a double and a single. Now it doesn't become about the home run anymore.
Right. Totally agree. The last guy to have 0 home runs at the time that he hit for the cycle was Fred Lewis in 2007. And we talked about this on Mother's Day. He hit for the cycle on Mother's Day.
Oh, that's cool.
How cool is that? Yeah. And the last one, Jeff, and again, we got to be real careful with the last one, Jeff. I have this terrible habit when I read the box scores, which I devour every morning, hopefully by 6 o'clock, over sometimes more than one Diet Mountain Dew. I just love to look at line scores, and I'm always looking for a line score that looks like a phone number. Peter Gammons taught me how to do this like 40 years ago. And famously, he saw one at Fenway Park one day, and he called the phone number, and it was a warehouse. He actually spoke to a person. And I actually spoke to a person when I did this about 15 years ago. It was a working number. Well, in the last week, and we can't give you the line score because it's too intrusive, it's borderline illegal, and it's really disrespectful. But I called the number and it rang. And then what did I have you do?
I called the number and it rang as well, but then after one ring, it went to a voicemail. So it wasn't like a disconnected number. It sounded like realized that 2 idiots were calling them because of the results of a baseball game, and they knew.
It sounds like a working number to me. So again, we do not do what we do. Do not be an idiot like me and look at line scores every day and say, hey, is that hey, there's a 301 phone number. That's our area code at home. No, it's not important. Don't do it.
On to League in Lids. I've taken every team, put them in a Lids hat here. And today, we're talking about the Texas Rangers. Now, for Ranger fans who might be new to the podcast, you can actually go all the way back to, can't remember if it was our 2nd or our 3rd episode. We had General Manager Chris Young on the show. So if you're a Rangers fan and you're new to the show, rewind back and find that episode interview with him. Sorry, go ahead.
Right, but whoever rewinds Chris Young just needs to remember the time that he hit a triple. Tallest man ever to hit a triple at a major league game, 6'10". It's one of the funniest stories I've ever told. Those are the stories we tell on this podcast.
Right.
We weren't asking him, when is Jacob deGrom coming back? We asked him, tell us about that triple you hit. And he was absolutely hilarious. Okay, the Rangers, first this needs to be said, Jeff. The Rangers just hosted the All-Star game, and they did a great job. John Blake, their PR guy, who's retiring pretty soon, and Rich Rice, also their PR guy, did an absolutely fabulous job. And as you remember, Jeff, I covered the Rangers from 1982 through 85. That was the first 4 years that I was a full-time beat guy. So I had so much fun covering the team because I was young and I was single and I was traveling all over the country. No kids to burden me like you and Kelly. And it was so great. So I met so many hilarious people there, including Charlie Huff of the Rangers. So Charlie Huff became their best pitcher. He was the best pitcher in the 4 years I covered there. But in 1984, Tom House, my dear friend, became the pitching coach of the Rangers. Might have been 85. Not the point. The point is Tom started having their pitchers throw footballs in the outfield before games to strengthen their arms. Now a bunch of teams throw footballs in the outfield before games to strengthen their arms. So I asked Charlie once, I said, Charlie, does throwing the football, is it helping the team at all? And he goes, I don't know, but we lead the league in third down conversions. Of course, in a football state like Texas, it was great.
That's amazing.
Also, Jeff, while I covered the Rangers the second time living in Texas, George W. Bush was basically one of the owners of the team, and I saw him at the ballpark all the time. And I hesitate to tell this story, but because I got to know him really well, your mom and I got invited to the White House 3 times for functions, 2 luncheons and 1 like intimate dinner with 18 people. It was one of the greatest. All 3 of those were 3 of the greatest nights of my life and Mom's life. So after the second one, and I got to be careful with this, Laura Bush, the first lady, the greatest hostess I've ever seen. She treated us all like gold there. We're leaving after the second night. And Mrs. Bush, who I love, sees me at the elevator because we're leaving the White House. And she says, it's so good to see you again, Tony. That's what she said. So the president of the United States admonishes his wife and says, it's Tim. It's not Tony. His name is Tim. And I feel like saying, I don't care what you call me. Just invite me back to the White House again.
You can call me whatever you want, First
Just
Lady.
Invite me back. It's so good to see you again, Tony.
All right, so we move on now, Dad. So every week we do a best of all Tim. And this is where Dad puts together, and respectfully, last week we had the all Hall of Fame team, which was great, right? And it was your opinion, right? Because everybody has their opinion, as they should, of the best players. But I love the best of all Tims that are goofy, and maybe the team's not any good. It doesn't matter because there's an all Eclipse team out there, or there's the all Courtroom team, right? These goofy names, and you didn't tell me what we're going to do this week, but you said you're back to kind of a goofy name, right? What are we doing?
All right, well, I'm going to give you the jump-off point here. River Ryan has made 2 major league starts now for the Dodgers, and he pitched on Sunday, and he pitched pretty well. River Ryan. So okay,
with the amount you emphasize the first, I'm going to say, at first I was thinking maybe it's players with first names as last names.
Right, good call.
Maybe we could do a different one, but you got to do some sort of bodies of water.
Bodies of water. Jeff, I have rubbed off, unfortunately, way too much on you. Okay.
I have too much time on my hands.
Right. Our catcher, I love our catcher, Steve Lake, who caught for several years, caught almost 500 games in the big leagues. Brooke Jacoby is our first baseman. Fred Marsh is our second baseman. Now, you would like me to have used Brandon Marsh, who plays for your favorite team, the Phillies, but I needed a second baseman, and Fred Marsh was the second baseman. Hod Ford is the shortstop. Now, Jeff, do you even know what a ford is? It technically is a body of water, I think, but it's a very low amount of water that you can drive your car through. Have you ever heard of a ford?
No, so you can drive your Ford through a ford?
Yes, exactly. Beautiful.
A ford is a shallow place with good footing where a river stream can be passing inside a vehicle, get the wheels. Right. Okay, so, I see a picture of it. I know exactly what it is now.
All right, so does it count?
Ford.
Believe me, I need a shortstop. Now, Brooks Robinson is the third baseman, different than Brooke Jacoby. Remember, there are no repeats when you do Team Tim. You can't use the same name 6 times.
You can't use Brandon Marsh now, as you mentioned.
Right, of course. So Jason Bay is one of our outfielders. My Mickey Rivers, who I covered with the Rangers. Remember, Jeff, he's the guy my first year on the beat asked me once. He said, Tim, can I borrow $2,000? I said, Mickey, I make $13,000 a year. I can't loan you $2,000. He was making $450,000, and he asked the little dinky sports writer if he could borrow $2,000. They said, I don't have $2,000 in my name. So Mickey's one of our outfielders, Simon Pond, who you remember from Blue Jay days, right?
Yeah.
All right, and Dave Moats is going to be our DH, Moats. And then, of course, River Ryan, since he's our jump-off point here, he's one pitcher. Bobby C, Seay. Jeffrey Springs.
Yeah.
Ernie Shore. And this is so sad, Jeff, and I mean it. This is so sad. I came up with this yesterday on Sunday, and our last pitcher, Doug Creek, died on Monday. He died yesterday, and he's on our All River team. So I came up with it on a Sunday. Doug Creek's on the team, and he died on Monday. Rest in peace, Doug Creek.
That's our best of all, Tim. Now, Dad, you are up in Bristol because it's the trade deadline, so we couldn't do this show together. But I actually have a surprise that I wanted to give you in person, but I'm just going to have to do it over the virtual studio. Is that okay?
Yeah. Is Emily pregnant again?
No.
Okay.
Oh, good Lord, no.
That would have been a surprise. Go.
That would have been a big surprise for me, too. All right. So, do you see what... I can't block my mic. Do you see what this says? Say it out loud.
Strat-O-Matic. Black.
Strat-O-Matic for this year's Hall of Fame cards did a black card edition. So it's like a collector's item. So for their 2024 Hall of Fame pack, I purchased all of the Hall of Famers, but in these really cool black cards.
Wow. That is so great.
I have all of the Hall of Famers, the 2024 pack, in my possession for Strat-O-Matic Black. Now, I bought it as a complete and total nerd, right? Because we love it. And when you come back on our recording day, Dad, we're gonna put two teams together and we're gonna play like we did growing up, because this was my favorite thing to play with you in the world.
But Jeff, we're not the only Strat-O-Matic nerds. I told you the story that Keith Hernandez, the greatest defensive first baseman of all time, told me once that he loved playing Strat-O-Matic as a teenager. So he gets drafted to play pro ball, and he packs his Strat-O-Matic to take with him to go play pro ball. And Keith Hernandez's dad goes, "Keith, you can't take that game with you. You're a professional baseball player." And Keith said, "But Dad, I'm halfway through the 1970 season." That's how much people love that game.
And former guest of the show, Doug Glanville, is a huge Strat-O-Matic fan. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
He is in the Hall of Fame for Strat-O-Matic. They have their own Hall of Fame, by the way.
Really? I have 100 Strat-O-Matic stories. We'll tell one per podcast.
Well, we're going to have time to do that, because if you go to Strat-O-Matic, you can check out, well, actually, they're sold out now on the Black Hall of Fame edition cards. But anyway, we are pairing up with them to do some of their simulations, because they are the market leader in sports simulations. So they have the game, right? But they use all that data they use to make the cards to do simulations. So we asked them to come up with a simulation for the trade that never happened in spirit of the trade deadline. Ted Williams traded for Joe DiMaggio. Now, it never happened. It's a bit of an urban myth, right, Dad? But there's some truth that there was a little bit of a conversation had about this.
Right. April 1947, the owner of the Red Sox and the owner of, so it was Tom Yawkey of the Red Sox and Dan Toppin of the Yankees. They decided over drinks one night at Toots Shore, wouldn't it be cool if we got Joe DiMaggio to Fenway Park, where he would have been an even better hitter, and Ted Williams to Yankee Stadium, where he would have been an even better hitter? What if we traded those two? And they actually discussed it. And then they went to bed at night and said, all right, we'll wake up in the morning and take a look at this thing. Well, Dan Toppin, the owner of the Yankees, basically said, all right, we're not going to do this, especially after Tom Yawkey said, and I'm going to need you to throw in that little left fielder that you have in the minor leagues. And that little left fielder was Yogi Berra, who went on to win 3 MVPs and 10 rings. So was it discussed? Absolutely. Was it really close to happening? I'm not so sure, but it is fascinating that arguably the two best players in the American League at the time, there was a discussion whether they should be traded for each other.
and the simulation was run, and I'm actually going to put up the graphics of what we're talking about on YouTube and on our social media and at greatgameorwhat.com. So you can follow along a little bit better when I go through these numbers, okay? The most obvious thing is they're saying, okay, 1947 is when the trade would have taken place. With Joe DiMaggio, the Red Sox won 2 World Series, breaking the curse of the Bambino.
Right.
Back in 48 and 50.
Right. In 48, they would have beaten the Braves. In 50, they would have beaten the Phillies. Okay. Yep. Now, let's also make it clear that the Yankees with Ted Williams still would have won the World Series in 47, 49, 51, 53, 56, 57, and 1960. Ted Williams' final season. What was also intriguing to me, Jeff, was how much better a hitter would those guys have been, where a right-handed hitter definitely benefits playing at Fenway Park and a left-handed hitter definitely benefits playing at Yankee Stadium. Well, according to them, Joe DiMaggio's basic OPS numbers were essentially the same, but he would have hit 18 more homers playing all those years at Fenway, and Ted Williams would have hit 70 more home runs having played at Yankee Stadium. So I just love stuff like that, and I love the math of it, and I love that they can run a simulation like that this many years later.
You know, and I think it's funny, too, because they said for Ted Williams, he hit slightly fewer doubles, 20 less. I'm like, well, some of those 20 doubles probably were homers.
Right. Especially to right field, because Ted Williams once famously told Tony Gwynn, history is made on the inside part of the plate. And if anyone tried to sneak a fastball by Ted Williams on the inside part of the plate, that was a bad idea. He would pull it to right field for another home run.
So, I mean, it could have changed dramatically the career of both of these players, but also the trajectory. We would have never had the craziness of 2004 and the 86-year curse of the Bambino. It would have been a lot different of a story. So thank you to our friends at Strat-O-Matic for running that simulation. And I'm excited. If there's a simulation that you want to hear, you can go to greatgameorwhat.com. And let us know if there's an urban myth or 2 teams you would love to see. Hey, who was the best Yankee team of all time? You know, we can run those simulations with our friends at Strat-O-Matic. Our Kurkjian Quandary today, though, is one that has been highly debated amongst friends that my dad works with. And I'm really excited for this one because, Dad, I think it's another one where you and I very much disagree with.
Okay, now, Jeff, we have to understand this is a fun-loving, joyful, cheerful show. We don't want anyone to die and everything else. But this is our quandary for the week, and we're using it because it's the trade deadline week. We always try to have a theme for our quandaries. So this theme is based on something that Gene Mauch once told me. Now, Jeff, Gene Mauch was a major league player. He was a limited major league player, but he played multiple years as an infielder, and one day, and was a great manager, one of the greatest baseball men of all time. And maybe 25 years ago, 30 years ago, I was sitting with him on the bench in Kansas City one day, just the two of us talking. The stuff I learned was fascinating. And he looked at me and he said, I would have given up 10 years of my life to play 100 games in Hank Aaron's body.
Wow.
That's how much he loved the game, and that's how much it meant to him to arguably be the best player in the game, even for 100 games. So this is our Kurkjian Quandary. It is, again, Jeff, it is hypothetical. It is playful. We don't want anyone to get hurt here. But would you trade during trade deadline week? Would you trade 10 years of your life to play an entire Major League Baseball season in Shohei Ohtani's body? So we're talking about the 2025 season, next season, when he is going to be pitching and hitting. Would you give up 10 years of your life to hit a baseball 475 feet, if not farther, to throw a baseball 100 miles an hour, to run like he does, and to arguably be, well, I don't think it's arguable, he's the most remarkable player in Major League history? Would you give up 10 years of your life to play play an entire season in Shohei Ohtani's body?
It's
Jeff,
tough because
That's
I
why
know
it's called a quandary, is we have a big sigh.
I know we don't want to be dark, right? But the reality is I'm sacrificing 10 years of living for 1 year of living the best life ever, right? And I would say no. And maybe it's because I'm a young dad, maybe because I've got so many years ahead of me, and the thought of seeing my child and one day children for 10 less years would not fit with me. And what would I do for 1 year? It would be very self-serving. It would just be the crowd screaming at me and all of this. Now, although, wait, hold on. Am I getting paid like Shohei Ohtani for 1 year?
First off, that's the second part of the question. We'll get to it in a minute. Jeff, people who love the game, you know what they would love to do just once. How many times you heard the average fan goes, I'd love to just hit a home run over a fence one day. I'd love to just throw a pitch and strike 3 batters out in a row. It matters to our best baseball fans. That's the trade-off that you're going to get. Now, I wouldn't take it either. However, the second part of the question is you're also going to be we'll make it $30 million this year in 2025 as Shohei's contract. Now, to me, this lessens the question because now the question is no longer about baseball greatness. It's about money. It's also about setting up your family and your children's family and your grandchildren's family for the rest of their lives. So, yes, Jeff, are you going to take it if I give you Shohei's talent and everything that comes with it for 1 year and you make $30 million?
Yes. And I'll tell you why, because one, you're right. Even in my Little League career, I never hit a home run. But imagine doing it at Dodger Stadium in a sold-out crowd against the New York Yankees in the World Series. Heck yeah. And two, I think my wife would kill me if I passed up that much money simply because I wanted to be around longer. She loves me, but like setting up the whole family for generational wealth might be worth the 10 years.
Right,
Call
Jeff,
me shallow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You are shallow, but Jeff, let's be morbid about this for 1 second, even though we're laughing. Let's say you're only going to live till 60. God forbid, please. But now you only live till you're 50. And then McKinley, your beautiful daughter, has a grandchild, and you're not even around to see it. You have to factor that in.
Yeah, I know. And I go back to the initial, I don't want to do it. I want to spend every year with my kids, and I'm going to take heat on social media for people saying, well, Jeff, like, money can't replace time with family, and that's absolutely true. We've had loss in our family. Can we make it like 10 years in solitary confinement so at least I'm alive?
No, Jeff.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'm not taking it. I'm going with my gut from the beginning. I know I've flip-flopped twice now, but I'm not taking it. I'm not taking it.
All right. It's quite a trade proposal. The biggest trade proposal ever at the trade deadline. 10 years of your life for 1 year in Shohei's body. Everyone who wants to chime in on this, please. This is the most harmless question ever. Okay?
This sounds like something like Ursula would offer a cartoon character. Only in Disney could you come up with this. GreatGameOrWhat.com right now to check out our Kurkjian Quandary. I'll put a poll up there on our social media as well. Our guest today is Eddy Alvarez, and because we're in the middle of the Olympics, which is so exciting. He won a medal for Team USA for baseball back in the 2020 Olympics, and he medaled as a speed skater in 2014, which is just like so mind-boggling to think you could be so good at two completely different sports that you medal in both.
Right. And Eddy Alvarez grew up in Miami, Jeffrey. So tell me how a guy who lives in Miami becomes a champion speed skater and then switches careers. He was always a baseball player and then played in the 2020 Olympics. So Eddy Alvarez is coming up next, and we can't wait to talk to him. He's playing AAA baseball for the Red Sox right now. He's tearing it up. We'll probably see him in the big leagues at the end of this year, but a great guest on the way. Welcome back to Is This a Great Game or What? And we are joined by our guest today, Eddy Alvarez, who won an Olympic medal in speed skating in 2014 and an Olympic medal in baseball in 2020. Eddy, it's Olympic week. Say hi to my son, Jeffrey, here.
Jeff, how we doing, man?
Eddy, thank you for joining us. This is like, I was leaving the office right before interviewing you, and my boss, who listens to the podcast, says, all right, who do you got this week? And I said, we have a 2-time Olympic medalist. He said, who? And I said, it's Eddy Alvarez. He won for baseball and for speed skating, and his jaw hit the floor thinking, what kind of athlete is this guy? Is there any correlation between these two things, Eddy? It's incredible.
Yeah, it's funny. I get asked that question more often than not. And I really, the only thing I could ever come up with is the fact that we go left. That's honestly the best I could come up with. But, I'm a firm believer that everything that I've experienced in the skating world has only propelled me in my baseball career to get to where I got to. And, I was a young man in during my skating days, and just to be able to have that little bit of a cheat code in the sense of understanding what it takes to get to the top again, only kind of boosted everything that I've experienced in baseball.
All right, so Eddy, I can't roller skate. I tried that once. It was a disaster. Ice skating, I tried it once, an equal disaster. And Jeff's as bad as I am. Can you help us? Could you teach us? Could you teach a 67-year-old man how to skate?
Yeah, it's never too old to teach a bulldog a new trick, right? You're never too old. We can figure something out. It might take a couple lessons. It is a very difficult sport, no matter how you look at it, from all aspects. Any type of skating sport, you see all the X Games, everything they're coming out with the Red Bull ice skating downhill stuff. It's a unique sport to fall into. I just so happened to grow up in the right era of Miami, Florida, which was the 90s, and rollerblading was the thing to do back in the day. And I got scouted out, and Olympic medal later, I just stuck with it.
But Eddy, from rollerblading to ice skating in Miami, how did that happen? How did that transition happen?
So rollerblading has its own discipline, worldwide known sport, which is inline speed skating. So growing up in Miami, I did a lot of rollerblading. I had a pair of skates for Christmas one year, and my parents were very diligent about taking me to South Beach every weekend. It was what I looked forward to as a kid, just to cruise around the streets and kind of do the aggressive skating of inline skating. And it was just some recreational speed skaters that found me cruising around one of the sidewalks there, and had a conversation with my parents on how I should try this sport of speed skating. Obviously, being from Miami, Florida, we've never heard of it. So I joined an inline speed skating team. Just so happened to be in contact with the same coach that coached Jennifer Rodriguez, who was the first Cuban-American female inline speed skater, transitioned over to the ice Olympic medalist. And I just followed in those footsteps and, became national champion at a very early age in all three disciplines of speed skating: inline, long track, and short track. Knew that was something that I can make something of. And then after high school, I got invited to train with the U.S. national team out in Salt Lake City, Utah. Moved out there and, just trained my butt away and, made the Olympic team.
So, Eddy, is it true that you left baseball your senior year of high school to be prepared for the next step in skating?
Yes. So I actually had a full ride scholarship to go to a NAIA school that my brother had gone to play ball, and it was St. Thomas University out close to Miami, actually. Very close relationship with the coach back in the day. His name was Manny Mantrana. May he rest in peace. He passed away a few years ago. and he knew what my world was about. He knew that I wanted to skate. He knew that I wanted to play baseball, and that was like the only attention from a school that was going to permit me to do both. But I knew that after high school, if I wanted to make this Olympic run a serious one, that I had to commit my entire time to it. So after high school, I went into his office, and he was more than willing to accept my decision, and said that whenever I wanted to come back, my scholarship be waiting for me.
All right. So, Eddie, let's say we take the average Major League Baseball player who maybe knows how to skate a little bit, and he races you in the 500 meters. Do you lap him once? Do you lap him twice? How could he fare against you in your prime?
Yeah, I've run into my fair share of hockey players that turn baseball players that have always challenged me to race. And I entertain the idea a little bit, but the truth is they have absolutely zero chance. But no, it's fun. It's such a cool. We were actually having this argument in the clubhouse last week. What's the most athletic sport out there? And to me, I think baseball is at least the most coordinated sport. You give a baseball player any instrument of sport, whether it be a football, basketball, a hockey stick, kind of hold our own. There's just some incredible athletes in baseball, so I wouldn't doubt that they would give me a little run for the money.
Right. Did any of your teammates, Chad Chisholm or anybody else, say, tell me about what it's like to be a speed skater? Did you have to educate them about how much of a skill that is?
Tim, I educate everyone every year. Every year, it's cool. And it comes with the territory of having such a unique story and, that I'm very proud of. And the fact that I've gotten to experience things that these athletes, haven't, it gives me the platform to be able to teach them and share my knowledge with them. It's very, the Olympic movement, the Olympic spirit is something that is incredible in my eyes. I think it's unfortunate that a lot of these Olympic athletes don't get the recognition that they deserve because of the amount of dedication and uniqueness that goes into their discipline. So it's so cool to be able to share what my experience was like in Olympic Village, to be able to share what it was like to hang out with fencers and all sorts of different types of sports out there. I'm one of the lucky ones that have gotten to experience it, and whenever I get a chance to speak about it, especially times like these, I have Olympics on right now on my TV. It's been nonstop in our clubhouse, and I get all the questions, and I'm just more than happy to share what I think I know.
Eddie, I want you to allow yourself to be selfish for a second. You were the flag bearer back in the 2020 Olympics with Sue Bird. How cool was that to not only be representing your country in competing in the games for the USA baseball team, but also then to be kind of heading up the opening ceremonies along with Sue Bird?
It is the highlight of my career. And I say this without hesitation. It was something that was it runs much deeper than just being bestowed that honor. I come from a family of immigrants. I like to consider myself, the prime example of what the American dream is. And that's what my family did. They're the generation before me are the ones that sacrificed everything. And I just, took advantage of their sacrifices. So the fact that I was elected by my Team USA peers to be the flag bearer, it shows that, my journey and everything that I've had to go through was worth it. And to share something like that with a legend, Sue Bird herself, it's pretty crazy. I wish SportsCenter and ESPN would have acknowledged me on an Instagram post a couple of days ago. They left me out. I was a flag bearer. But it's okay. I know that I have moved a lot of people, especially in my background, my culture, being Cuban, and to wave that American flag, knowing the the opportunities that it has presented to my family, and the life changing experiences it has presented to myself, and now to be able to carry that with me. It's unbelievable. It hasn't quite hit me yet. I'm still in the fire, but I know one day I can't wait to be able to share this with my kids, and eventually grandkids.
Yeah,
Right.
it's pretty ridiculous because I feel like ESPN and SportsCenter always talking about this year's flag bearer, LeBron James, whoever that guy is.
Who's that?
I think yeah, I'm never, not sure, not
Yeah.
sure. Came out of kind of nowhere there. So we need more for Eddy Alvarez, that's for sure. But how incredible! And I saw you getting emotional and choking up, and I think it's incredible to represent our country and our family. And just thank you for representing our country in the way you have, because you're right. This country is a country of immigrants, whether you're a first generation or a 10th generation. It doesn't matter. That's how the country started. Sorry, Dad. I know. Had to go
Uh,
down that little rabbit hole.
No, I
what?
appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, back to Sue Bird for a minute, Eddie.
Yes.
Look, I'm 5'4.5". Jeffrey's 5'6". Is Sue Bird taller than you? You stood right next to her.
No, I stared her right in the eyes, Tim. I looked her right in the eyes. We are the same height, and we sat next to each other on the bus while Kevin Durant had to use a whole row behind me. But she's an incredible human being. She was. I mean, just to be able. I mean, because the Olympic ceremonies, the opening ceremonies, is long. Like, it's a taxing event for these athletes. So we're together for hours on end, walking here, walking there, bus ride here, bus ride there. So me and Sue had to be next to each other. I felt so bad for her; she had to deal with me, but it was incredible. I got to learn more about her life and everything about her, and it's incredible that someone so decorated as she is, as humble as she is as well. It's so cool to watch. It's motivating to me to be a better person, and take that extra time, whether it be a fan, a kid. I'm in the minor leagues right now. Everyone is important.
Right. Eddie, getting back to speed skating for a moment. Let's say we take your average speed skater who hasn't played much baseball in his life, and we put him into a major league game. How does that go?
It's probably gonna go a lot like what last week went for me. A lot like some 0 for 5s. Maybe 3 to 5 Ks. But you know what? There's going to be a lot of heart. I will say that. Speed skaters, we're resilient. The amount of training that goes into that sport is jaw dropping. We were talking about dropping jaws. We're on the ice, training, cross training between ice and not ice. 6 to 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, 11 months of the year, for what, 40 something seconds of what it is in the Olympics. That time you get to perform, put everything together, and sometimes it's some of those athletes don't make it, which is crazy to think about, right? We dedicate our whole lives for something that happens every 4 years, and we don't get the opportunity to go and showcase what we've worked for. And so they're gonna come back, and they're gonna keep pushing, even though they're most likely gonna strike out.
All right, Eddie, take us back to 2014 and then take us forward to 2020. And you stood on an Olympic medal stand with a medal around your neck while they played the national anthem. Tell us what that was like.
Emotional. So 2014, we won the silver medal. Russia beat us, so we had to listen to their anthem. But still, stepping on the podium and looking at a field of heads, because you're looking at this crowd. There's the Olympic the Olympic torch is in the back. It's a beautiful, beautiful sight. You feel on top of the world. Then when I had that opportunity to do it again in Japan, and we lost to Japan on their home turf, we had to listen to the Japanese anthem as well, in an empty stadium, because it was during the COVID Olympics in Tokyo, which was, I hope we never have to experience that again. That was a crazy moment. But either way, I loved being on the podium with my brothers. That's what it felt like. It felt like I was sharing a moment with guys that sacrifice just as much as I have, and it was I'm going to cherish those moments forever.
Last question for me, Eddie. Todd Frazier is a future guest. We're going to talk to him when we go to the Little League World Series. We're doing a show from there.
Well, let me know if you need me to text him and say, hey, you need to get on this show. All right? You let me know. I'll yell at him.
Tell us about, he's great. He's worked with my dad. They've called games together. They love doing the Little League World Series together. Do you have any great Todd Frazier stories of you guys playing on that 2020?
I have way too many, but I definitely have a couple that I would love to share. The Todd Father, as I like to call him, or pretty much everybody loves to call him. He's a character. He's a one-man show. That guy needs his own show is what he needs. So we're waiting to go to a practice. So we're waiting in our our bus stop or section. There was like a bunch of, we had to walk to this bus station almost, and it was just 1,000 stops. That's what it felt like, and we were like one of the last ones, so we had to walk one of the furthest. And we get to the bus stop and we're waiting. We're bored, we're talking smack, you know how we baseball players can get, and we're just sitting there, and I put my phone up to do a selfie for nothing, and I put the phone, Todd sitting behind me, and I zoom in on Todd, and next thing I know, he starts singing. And he has a voice of an angel. I don't know.
He is a great singer. I have. It's
great. It's incredible. Yes. Everyone's jaw was on the floor. So I'm gonna blow him up right now. He started singing this Aladdin song.
Eddie, I don't know if you know, but Todd has like 6,000 pins from the Little League World Series. He is
did good in the Olympics too. He traded. That's like a thing in the Olympics. You get a batch of pins so that you can trade with other athletes from other countries and stuff. He did great. He was one of the top guys in our baseball team.
Right. Well, we jokingly call him the biggest 12-year-old we've ever seen, because that's who he is. He still acts that way.
And he still
acts
is.
like he's from Toms River, New Jersey, and he's still playing in the Little League World Series, even though he's almost 40 years old. It's beautiful.
Exactly. All right, I have the video. You guys ready?
Let's
for
this?
See it.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's so great.
Oh, I can't wait to get a text from him.
Eddie, I have one last question, and it's a serious question, okay? There are two people in the history of the world who have played Major League Baseball and won an Olympic medal in another sport. It's you and
Can
it's
I name
Jim.
him?
Go ahead.
Jim Thorpe. That is...
Eddie, I'm 35 years older than you. Jim Thorpe might be the greatest athlete of all time.
Of all time.
And you are in the same two-man club as him. How does that make you feel?
I had the absolute honor of going to the Jim Thorpe Museum in Oklahoma City when I was with the Dodgers, the AAA team in OKC. The museum's attached to the stadium. It was the coolest thing. There's a Jim Thorpe statue of him. I have a picture of that as well, of me standing next to him. I got to visit the museum and learn about his life. Talk about an immigrant story. That is as pure as it comes. The guys had to battle all sorts of setbacks and you name it. But in my eyes, he is the greatest athlete to have ever walked this earth.
Eddy Alvarez, thank you. This was so great, and we had a joy talking to you. We're going to go watch more Olympics. You're going to go watch more Olympics on your off day. I'm sure you're excited to have an off day to sit on your butt and turn on Peacock and just stream all day.
Oh, it's on. It's on. I'm as soon as you hang up, I'm going to press the volume button so I can hear it.
Just to finish, Eddie, our last three guests on this show have been Cal Ripken Jr., Johnny Bench, and Eddy Alvarez. How about that for a lineup, huh?
Wow, that's incredible. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Not me, the other two.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us. You've been an absolute delight. Thank you.
No, thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Eddy Alvarez. That was so much fun. He is so great. And I'm glad we could get him back to watching the Olympics because he is a two-time Olympic medalist and in two completely different sports. So that was a great interview. And you compared him to Jim Thorpe, and he's been to the Jim Thorpe Museum. That was like crazy.
Right. Jim Thorpe, by the way, Jeff, won in the Olympics in the pentathlon and the decathlon in 1912. He also played, of course, Major League Baseball. He played professional football, and he played professional basketball. I'm not sure there's a way around this. He might be the greatest athlete of all time, but with all due respect to the great Jim Thorpe, he didn't play in the big leagues and was a speed skater. Eddy Alvarez's twosome there is unprecedented, basically, in the history of sports. And we had him on the air talking about skating and trying to hit a slider. It was so beautiful.
Thank you for everybody for listening to this special Olympics and trade deadline edition. Make sure to follow wherever you're listening right now. Subscribe. And just because the word subscribe sounds scary, no, it's completely free to listen to our show every single Tuesday. You get a brand new episode. So, Dad, I hope you survived the trade deadline, my friend. And I'll see you back in the basement studio next week.
Next week. See you then.
Thank you so much for listening. And as always, thank you for being a part of our family.